Sure, a few of you are like, well, there you are, Father, there's no beard. Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. This morning, I of course want to preach on so many different things. We've been kind of snailing through John 6 on the Bread of Life discourse, is what it's called. Very worthy topic because it brings our attention to the Eucharist, who is Jesus here among us, has not left us. I had every intention of continuing in that way of preaching, but today I must preach on something else. And it's the topic of clergy sexual abuse. As any father would have to have a tough conversation with their son or daughter, I have to do the same today. Of course, a lot of this has been in recent weeks, especially with Cardinal McCarrick, who was the ranking ecclesiastical figure for many, many years, being the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., has now been accused and with credibility in these ways. And also other figures prior to him as well, in Scotland and in other places where they were higher officials than just priests. And on the heels also of the Me Too movement as well. So this calls to attention for us. These are especially heinous things, especially for people in leadership or authority, those who are supposed to be role models. And ever since the early 2000s, these things have been out in the public arena being reported on. And for you and me, it's easy for us as Catholics to be disheartened, to be ridiculed among our friends and family members and in the workplace. No amount of apologies are going to be enough for these crimes that have been committed. And all the accusations are reported on. Some of them are substantiated, and those are the ones that really break our hearts. And for you in the pews, you get flack for being Catholic, and because some of these high-profile things are in your faces all over the place, every news tycoon is running them because it catches people's attention. And it deteriorates trust in authority. It really does. But, and I am truly sorry for the fact that you get flack for these things. I am sorry, and I do wish it were otherwise. And I am sorry, and it's impossible to apologize adequately for these things. But of course, what does it tell us? Of course, we're trying to do things that will remedy this with checks and protocols and balances and background checks, all the things we can possibly do humanly. Anybody who works with minors will have to go through all these things. What it's done is it's deteriorated the credibility of priests and archbishops and bishops and pastors and deacons. They're called into question even beyond the walls of the church, especially now. And all I have to do is walk through any reception, wedding or otherwise, walk through any airport, and I know what's happened. If they treat the priests this way, how do they treat you in the pews as Catholics? Gosh, my heart goes out to you as well. And I am sorry for what my brother priests have done, but this tells you and me, that something has to change, of course. If we're going to move forward in this increasingly secular kind of age, to sustain and recover our call to be disciples and evangelists in this kind of culture, there is a temptation to, at the same time when we know something should change, there's a temptation to say, all right, let's distance ourselves now from the parish. Let's distance ourselves from our Catholic faith and any association with Catholicism through having a crucifix in our home, etc. But this is not the direction we want to go. We want to go in the direction of heroic faith in the midst of all this nonsense, in the midst of all these things that we see that are there actually trying to heckle us and discourage us, but we must not let it. We need heroic lay people especially, not priests or deacons or other clergy members. They must, of course, they're part of their very being, but we need heroic lay men and women to bravely run into the church, to live their faith, to be involved in it, to turn about, to drown evil with an abundance of good in that way. And saints have done this before our age, too. There was a lot of nonsense in the 1300s, and St. Catherine of Siena, a lay woman, calls the Pope to the task and says, you must return to Rome to preside over the universal church. And she wrote him a letter, she prayed, did penance herself for the universal church, and the Pope listened to her. And he went back. He went back to Rome. For us, we must live integrity. And that's the main point that I'm going to try and communicate in this homily, is that you and I both, and I will call my brother priests to the same kind of accountability, to live our faith with integrity. Integrity means we've integrated it into our hearts. It is a part of our very being, not an exterior activity that we do just a tiny bit of our week. It is something in us, in our very beings. And we'll live that integrity even when no one is looking, when no one is in the room with us, and we are tempted against our faith and against goodness and good acts, all of those things. Even when no one is looking, we will live it. And we'll use those moments of temptation as little catalysts into prayer, into real prayer with the Lord, to become wholesome once again and not follow in the cynical and jaded life that many people around us live. Life is worth living well. As Fulton Sheen had said so well, life is worth living, and it's wonderful when it's lived close to Jesus Christ. It is wonderful. It is beautiful. In fact, the simplest things become the most delightful things in Christ. And you, the laity, are called just as much as us priests to live the faith, to live that life of faith everywhere you find yourself. Everywhere. This includes in our morality, to really seek holiness in our morality, in our actions. This includes sexual morality. This includes also our attitudes about human life, and especially human life from conception to natural death, to look these things up, to listen to relevant radio so we can tap into experts who know these things, who don't live around us, but can teach us beautiful things. Great new ideas can result to live the faith. Instead of it feeling like it's Lent all the time, like we can sometimes have that attitude, and that is horrible. That's a juvenile attitude to have at best. For us, we really want to say, no, I love my faith. My faith, in fact, gives me so much life and wind in my sails when nothing else around me encourages me. Let us take seriously that call to holiness then and live the integrity that we're called to. Holiness actually moves the church forward. So this call, with all these weird things, if nothing happens, if we just listen to this homily and others like it and ignore what it says to us or challenges us, and if we don't live that integrity, if we say, I can deteriorate his credibility because he looks funny. He should have a beard, but he doesn't. Who knows what the thoughts will be? But if we don't live it, you and me, we'll see more scandals come out. We'll see more strange things come about. But if we live it, we'll see change. We'll see that 180 that we desire to happen. If we ignore it or slump away from it and what it says to us, nothing will happen, and it will get worse. So we must fight sin in us and around us to love the sinner that we encounter, to love them, to look at them with the eyes that Jesus would have upon them too. For Jesus lives in us. That's not a nicety or a pious platitude. He is really in us and with us. To look at them with the eyes of Jesus, soak in all of them, love them, and then bring them to an encounter with Jesus. Bring them here, even when no one's here, to bring them to pray before Jesus in the tabernacle. There's no other solid source of love in this world than what resides and who resides in this tabernacle. To love that sinner and hate the sin. Sin offends God, and it wounds and kills the soul, so that we're no longer interested in what is holy. And to stay away from other things too. It's not a syllabus of error. I'm still calling us to integrity. But one other thing, to keep away from certain things, certain attitudes about clericalism, which by that I mean, I like Father X because he does that. I don't like Father Y because he does that. And he sounds monotone. To stay away from that to really move past that kind of attitude and say, I see with a supernatural vision. I hear with ears of faith. And then we have this role to play, to uphold the moral truths once again, passed on from Jesus down to us. You don't need my permission to live your faith, live your Catholic faith in your homes, in your cars, in your workplace. Start Bible studies in your house with your friends. Watch what happens. Come to the church not only to socialize and to see others, but to pray and to worship the Lord and to be close to the Blessed Sacrament, Jesus himself. Chronic addicts and sinners drag the church down, but her saints lift her up. And that is our call, to become saints, to live the integrity of our faith. And watch what happens when that occurs. Let us live that faith day in and day out, in season and out of season, being stubborn in really our identity as sons and daughters of God. Let us live the integrity of our beautiful faith.